Starseeds, it's Sid, and today I am going to be talking about palmistry. So, I already have another video on the history of palmistry. Please check that out if you haven't already, but today we are going to be getting into really what certain lines mean. So right here I have just drawn a left hand. As you can see, the thumb's over here, the pinky's over here. And then these lines right here are just the bracelets. I'm not going to be talking about bracelets today, but that's just there for visual purposes. So, I'm going to draw the lifeline, the headline, and the heart line. These are the three main lines in palmistry. We are going to be talking about mainly these today. Okay, so there's going to be other videos in this palmistry playlist that I'm creating. Before I explain these any further, I want to address, which hand are we looking at in palmistry? And the short answer is both the left and the right hand. And it's kind of a controversial topic. Some say if you're a guy, you look at one hand. If you're a girl, you look at the other hand for your present and future, and the other hand is your past. I like to say that my dominant hand, my right hand, is definitely my present and my future, kind of what I've done in this life, and then my left hand is what I came in with, and that's just very obvious for me. But the short answer is, we look at both, and if you're having trouble deciphering which hand is your past and which hand is your present and your future, you can just compare the differences and figure it out for yourself, and whichever hand you see is your current and your future, that is what works for you. So let's really get into what these lines mean, okay? So lines are not going to look so perfect like this. Chances are they're going to have some other, markings within them, or some chaining, which would look a little like this. The whole line can just kind of consist of that, and that means there's just lots of major events going on. My lines, pretty much all of them, are like that, but not to that vivid extent. They're more like this. And then in a line, if you have one little, or a couple little chains, that would be an island, and that's a smaller island right there within them. That is some major event that takes place depending on which line it's in, okay? And then lines that have just a lot of this, that's just kind of unsteadiness throughout the line. It's pretty similar to the chain effect. It's not very structured. Some lines are very deep, okay? Some lines are just very faint. I find if you have deeper lines in all of your lines, these three major lines at least, the other ones we're not really talking about yet, but just the three major lines, if they are very deep like this, that means that you are stubborn and you're not a very sensitive person. You can take some crap. If all three major lines are very faint like this, you're more sensitive. And that is a major thing for me on how I determined just one little thing, the most obvious thing, which hand is my past, what I came into this life with, and then what line is my current and my future, because my past is very faint on my left hand, just for me personally. And then my right is very bold, and, I've just been through a lot of stuff this life, and my lines are more bold on my present and my future. I'm not as sensitive anymore. And then there is sometimes, I need to look at this better, a line with like a dot. It could be a freckle, a birthmark, whatever it is, there's some form of dot on that line, and that means that there's an event. Usually it's not that great if it's a dot. Usually any of these markings just signify something big, and usually it's not that great, to be honest. And you can determine when it's going to happen by looking at your age, which we're not really going to do in this video. I find it's not that accurate, but it definitely can be if you figure out exactly for your palms how it works. I'm going to link some good resources in the description, but I haven't mastered the age thing quite yet, okay? So I'm not going to preach something that I don't practice. I look at the lines and mainly how they are, but mainly the direction that they're going. I think that's the biggest thing. So obviously this lifeline right here, I usually don't dot my I's, but I did. This lifeline, it curves, okay? If you have a straight lifeline, very straight, that means that you are just a very straight, to the point person, and your life probably isn't as exciting as most people's. You want a nice curved lifeline, okay? It's the best kind of lifeline, and I don't like saying some things are better than others, but you're just going to have not a more fulfilling life, but a more interesting life, definitely, okay? You can still have a fulfilled life. If it's straight, it's just going to be a life that's not as fun as some other people's, which is okay. That's pretty much the only thing I look at with the lifeline is the nice curvature of it. Also, the length, I do want to say, obviously, it's not so obvious, but it's not determining how long you're going to live, okay? If you have a short lifeline, it's kind of like having a straight lifeline, even if it's curved. It's not going to be as exciting as life gets on. This isn't your age of life, it's your kind of life force, your force of life. So if your line kind of stops here, that would be considered like a really short lifeline, because the lifeline is a very long line. If it's all the way down to say here, going to the bracelet, then that's definitely long. But yeah, the length really just determines your life force and not so much so your life, okay? So if it's short up here and it ends, say here, for example, you might develop a disease and not have as much life force. Something might happen in your life, especially if there's kind of like a branch or a dot or something at the end of it, and that signifies, something happened and you're not living life to the fullest anymore. Do you want to say if you have a branch, your life is going separate ways? If you have two lifelines, because this does happen, you might have two completely separate families. You might have a double life, Hannah Montana style, possibly. Okay, you just have two different personalities. Maybe you have a lot of planets in Gemini or something. There's a lot of possibilities, but you can use your intuition if your lines are split to see, how life is going for you. Why is it splitting? Why is there two separate kind of lifelines, two separate lives going on within you? I was just talking for a while, but I guess it didn't film. So I added this branched line up here with the types of lines because the branched line is very important, okay? And remember to use your intuition in determining, oh, my lifeline splits. Oh, there's two of them. Oh, there's a dot. Oh, it's chained. What does this mean for me in my life? Just use your intuition and you'll figure it out. But we're going to move on now to the headline. And I kind of made this more curved. So the headline is definitely generically straighter than the lifeline. The lifeline generally always has a curve to some extent. And the headline is the most straight line, usually, okay, depending on the person. But so if you have a straight headline, this means that you are just very straight to the point, very logical and scientific, analytical thinker. That's your personality. You're very scientific. If it's more curved like this or just curved at the end, this is a pretty curved headline. And that means you are more artistic, you're more open-minded, okay? Not as so scientific, more just spiritual, artsy, open-minded, okay? So it's good to have a little bit of in between, one or the other. They're all great, really. So your headline determines a lot about your personality. Some people say the headline is the most important line because it also says a lot about your mental health, okay? So if you have a headline that splits and kind of goes two separate ways, that means, maybe you can be a more analytical thinker and maybe you can have an artsy side to you, okay? It also determining where the headline is going. If you have a long headline like this and it's going all the way to the mount of the moon, which we'll kind of go over the different mounts and what each finger represents, but it's very important in palmistry to know what planet rules which area of the hand, which we will get into later in this video and in other videos in the future. But just learning these three main hands first is a great way to get into palmistry. So your headline determines a lot about your mental health and realizing if it's chained in some parts, if there's just maybe even one line going through it at a certain part, if there's like a cross in it, what that means for you at that age, okay? Really the other important thing about the lifeline and the headline is the gap in between them. Right here, they're touching just a little bit, not a long time, but this tells about how much you let other people's opinion of you affect you in your life, okay? So if there's a big gap between the headline and the lifeline, that means that you could give a crap about what other people think of you, okay? It really doesn't affect you at all. If they're touching, you let it affect you. You need other people's validation to really live a happy life and have your mental health be good and have your life be good. And if they're touching for a long time, by a long time, I mean kind of up until like the end of the mount of Jupiter or the end of, the index finger, that would be the headline and the lifeline touching for a really extended period of time, and you really let those people opinion of you bother you, and that will be an issue for you if they're touching for that long. And any longer than that, that's just way too long. It's extremely long. Okay, so you only want them to touch a little bit, if at all, okay? Really a gap between them is good, okay? You don't need other people's opinion of you and your lifeline touching your headline and your mental health. All right, so we're going to move on to the heart line. The heart line, some people say it starts here, some people say it starts here. I really think it starts here because the end of it tends to kind of fade out with all of these major lines. So really it's over here on the opposite side of the hand, over by the pinky is where it starts in my opinion. And then it can either go just up to the mount of Saturn, your middle finger right here, or it can go in between like I've drawn right here, or it can go all the way to the mount of Jupiter, it can go to the beginning of the mount, end of the mount. It can really go any of these places, okay? And a short lifeline would be to just the middle finger, maybe even not that far. Okay, that'd be extremely short. But usually it goes at least to the mount of Saturn, this middle finger right here. And that means that, you have a capacity of love and you're more reasonable about it. You're more realistic, okay? If you break up with someone, you'll get over it quicker than someone whose heart line goes all the way to the mount of Jupiter. And you could have a line that goes right in the middle and then it goes to the end. You can have one that goes any of those three places. You could have it actually do that. You can have it branch out. Mine kind of does that actually. Mine goes like to kind of the edge of the mount of Saturn and then all the way to the edge of the mount of Jupiter, because in some scenarios I'll love like that, in some I'll love like that. It depends how I'm feeling. So you can interpret your own if yours does that as well. But incorporating all of these into your interpretation of your heart line. If there's an island, something happened, okay? If there's lots of chaining in the beginning and then it gets better at first, you're not really stable, and then it gets better. The heart also determines about your actual heart and just your health overall. Kind of your lifeline does as well, but your heart can tell really about your physical heart and heart attacks or heart disease especially. So you want to know when something is about emotions and when something is about your physical body and your physical health. And it can be kind of tricky to differentiate between the two if it hasn't already happened yet, right? So I would say be aware of dots on your heart line and be aware of an island on your heart line, okay? And then an island is just, one of these things. That's the island right there. Kind of watch out for those. And the further along in your heart line, maybe be a little more careful at that age, maybe not, eat a lot of bad food, something like that. I'm not a doctor. Consult your doctor if you're concerned. But really, the length of the heart line is the biggest teller. Also, the curvature. If your heart line is very straight, like your lifeline and your headline, that means you're more straightforward, not as creative, and as a way of interpreting that for the heart line, maybe not as affectionate, okay? If you have a more curved heart line, you're probably more affectionate, especially if it's long and curved, you're very lovey, okay? Yeah, so that was really the 3 major lines. There's other lines, okay? There is the fate line, which kind of goes right there in the middle. It goes up to this Mount of Saturn right here in the middle finger. This is the fate line. And some people, you can hardly see this line at all. For me, on my right hand, I cannot find this line to this day. On my left hand, it's pretty straightforward and clear, and it's there. It's nice and long and goes up all the way. So that means I came into this life with a set fate. Your fate line is really just is your fate kind of set for you. Do you have a destined life path? And if you can't really see your fate line, your life could go multiple ways, okay? If it's branched, your life can go multiple ways. But if it's faint, like it's really not set, there's multiple ways, not just 2 ways. There's, an infinite amount of ways that your life could go, and it depends what you do with it. So apparently I did something in my life to make my fate line kind of disappear, and I can't find it right now. My life can go a number of ways. So also, there's something called a sun line. Any line that goes up to the Mount of Apollo, the Mount of the Sun right there on your ring finger. Not a lot of people have this. I do have this. It's pretty rare actually, and it's a very good sign, and it just means that you are expressive, okay? You are very creative, and people kind of recognize you because the sun is about, outgoing energy. This is why it's important to know what all of these are. So this is the sun. Wow, sun right there. And then this is Mercury. This is Saturn. And then this is Jupiter right there. And then over here we have Venus kind of in this whole area. I'll put the little areas over here. And the amount of the sun, it's kind of 2 little bubbles right there. It's really 2 mounts right next to each other. And then Mount of Mercury. Over here, it's the Mount of Luna. This is really kind of bigger, okay? Over here is Luna, or the moon. My art skills are not very good right now. And then over here, our lines are getting really crazy now, okay? But we have Upper Mars over here. Can't really see, but Upper Mars, and then Lower Mars is really like right here, and they're more on the same path. But this whole area, this middle part of the hand, is really all ruled by Mars, okay? The Upper Mars is because I'm gonna show you guys on this hand for a sec. Upper Mars is above your headline, Okay, it's under your heart line, above your headline. And then lower Mars is right here, really directly across, but it's called lower Mars because it's below your headline and below your lifeline. And right here is the plane of Mars, okay? So we have Venus, Moon, Mercury. This whole finger is Mercury. This whole finger is the Sun or Apollo, Saturn, and Jupiter. And then really right here, some people say this rules like the North Node. And then over here, in between the mount of Venus and the Moon, is your South Node. All right, just a little part. So, in case you guys are wondering, you need to know what these mean to kind of interpret any little stray lines, because we know if we look at our palms, there is hundreds, if not thousands, of lines there, and there's just lots of little ones. So what do those little ones mean is up to you to really interpret. I do want to say, if you have a line kind of going to the mount of Mercury, that's either, it's called the line of Mercury, the health line, or the liver line is really the traditional name for it, I believe. And that tells a lot about your health. So if you want to look at health, look for a line going up to the mount of Mercury, or look in your heart line, or even look in your lifeline. Those are the 3 spots to look for health. Okay, and if you have this line of Mercury and you don't really know how to interpret it for health, it says a lot about communication. Okay, you might be a public speaker if you have a very prominent mercury line. You might have a very good liver and digestive system if you have a very prominent and deep mercury line. If it's very faint or you can't find one, you might have digestive issues. And then over here, kind of under the mount of Mercury, under the mount of Mercury, above the heart line, you might have some lines. Those are major relationship lines. They're called marriage lines, but we know nowadays you can be in love with someone and not get married, okay? There's also lines for your children, kind of either right here. Some people say they're right here. They're around the mount of Mercury somewhere, and I'll talk about them in a different video so we can get into marriage and child lines more. But as you can see, we've got a very complicated looking hand now. Those were the 3 major lines. Look for what type of lines you have. Look if they are curved or straight, and look at where they are going, what area of the hand, what that area of the hand is ruled by, to find out more about your lines. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and we will get into more palmistry in another video. Love and light, and the hybrid children are coming soon.